Obesity is a significant challenge. This country on average is overweight.
What are some of the solutions or problems that you all have worked on to try to solve?
I like developing technologies where they can enable a set of therapeutics, a collection of applications. You, of course, have to be very, very disciplined that platforms themselves don't have value. The products that come out of the platform is what generates the value for the company.
I've always seen when you nail the right hire, when you're able to bring the right personnel into your team, it can be like a 10x, 100x impact then.
There's a saying that hiring is the most important decision that a leader makes, and I firmly believe that. Jennifer Doudna was the first to engineer this enzyme complex called Cas9, CRISPR-Cas9, and discover how to direct it to any location in the genome, in any genome, from bacteria through human genome.
It wasn't a stock question. I'm truly curious about how AI is affecting this field.
I view it as an important tool in the toolbox. Sometimes you need to pull out a microscope. Sometimes you need to pull out a CRISPR. Sometimes you need to pull out AI.
Welcome to The Show Goes On, a podcast about the people who keep businesses running behind the scenes. My name is Aamir Noorani, and today I'm joined by David Schaffer. David Schaffer is a professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering at UC Berkeley, where he also directs QB3 and the Bakar Labs. His research applies engineering principles to advance gene and stem cell therapies, including pioneering the use of directed evolution to engineer viral vectors. He has published over 250 papers, holds 50 plus patents, and co-founded 7 biotech companies, including 4D Molecular Therapeutics. David, thanks for being here today. How are you?
Doing very well and thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for the invite.
Yeah, of course. So you have an extensive bio, and I want to ask you, when people ask what you do, how do you usually answer?
I would say I'm an innovator and an entrepreneur. So on the innovation side, I've built an academic program over the past 26 years at Berkeley to be able to solve problems, to develop knowledge and technologies that can solve problems and potentially lower barriers to clinical success within industry. So in the process of doing that, had been very, I think, honored to play a role in many people's lives along the way, and have advised over 110 graduate students and postdocs within my lab, and which has been an utter joy and honor to work with very smart, incredible people that go off and make discoveries, and then enable the next phase of what we do, which is taking innovation and being entrepreneurial about it. Taking the products of our discoveries and getting them into the private sector, into the public sector from the private, from the public sector into the private sector, and placing those technologies on a path where they could potentially scale into solutions to societal problems. So I've enjoyed the scientific innovation and the industry startup entrepreneurship over the past 26 years, and look forward to continuing to do so.
That's incredible. So what are some of the solutions or problems that you all have worked on to try to solve?
Yeah, so I think, each company has its own style and story. I really found, almost in retrospect, that I gravitated towards platform technologies. And I liked going out, looking at problems within the world, and we work on human therapeutics, so specifically problems in the clinic. I have a number of MDs in my family, and I love talking to them and others, and to startup companies about what problems they're facing, what are the unsolved problems. And I then love to find a collection of nails where if you develop a really good hammer, you could hit all those nails. Some companies start out as a single asset, like a small molecule inhibitor of a kinase, and are off to the races to be able to get into clinical trials for cancer. I like developing technologies where they can enable a set of therapeutics, a collection of applications, a bag of nails. And so just one example is you brought up 4D Molecular Therapeutics. The big problem was that, this particular class of virus called AAV, adeno-associated virus, the natural versions of it are pretty efficient. They're okay, but they're not targeted towards particular cell types, and many cell types are just, you can't deliver DNA to them with this particular virus. So we developed a technology where we genetically diversify the AAV, create billions of new variants, engineered variants, and then do high throughput screens to evolve or select for the variants that are now highly targeted and very efficient towards a given cell type. So that's a platform in the sense that that cell type could be a cardiomyocyte if you're going after heart disease. It could be a neuron if you're going after a retinal disease or a disease within the brain and spinal cord. It could be an hepatocyte if you want to treat a disease within the liver. So it's a platform in the sense that that same technology enables a broad range of applications, and then that turns into a portfolio of products that the company is developing once that technology has been spun out into industry. So all 7 of the companies that have been spun out of my lab have been platforming, have been a platform technology that can address a collection of problems. And then it's really up to the company to make the decision right about which problems to pursue first.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you balance that? Like the research that happens at the company behind the scenes versus knowing when you have a product that's ready to go to market? How do you balance those two?
Yeah, so I've really spun out companies at kind of two junctures. Most of the time, we spin them out when the platform technology we're convinced that it's shovel ready to create that first clinical candidate, that first developmental candidate drug that would then go into the phase 1 clinical trial. And we have at that stage proof of concept results showing the platform works, that it can solve a problem maybe within a mouse, and is ready then to go to human. And then, once you end up in the company, you of course have to be very, very disciplined that platforms themselves don't have value. The products that come out of the platform is what generates the value for the company. So what that means is that we need to be very efficient and disciplined in identifying that first application we want to go after, generating the developmental candidate as quickly as we possibly can, and then racing to the clinic, because that's of course what's going to de-risk the company and create value for the investors, and eventually create opportunities for patients to have better health. So we want to get that first developmental candidate out of the platform ASAP, and maybe have a second backup that's coming out relatively soon, and not think so much about improving the platform, because at that stage the platform should be ready enough to start generating developmental candidates. Maybe in the future we can come back and tweak and improve the platform, but we really want to create products initially.
Yeah, I love that because if you spend all this time working on the platform and then you don't have a product to show for it that can be monetized, then lights out for the platform then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you balance that interplay between working with students or entrepreneurs that want to build a platform and are having difficulties getting the product launched? Like how do you balance the scientific mindset versus the business mindset between both of those?
Yeah, I mean, the company, of course, by definition, is a business, so the business mindset needs to be emphasized. And I think I've done hopefully a good job. Perhaps my graduate students and postdocs could inform more, but a good job in training people to be problem solvers and to be practically minded. So every single company I've co-founded out of my lab has been started with a first employee being a graduate student or postdoc from my lab. Not as as the CEO, but as the scientist or director level person who really launches the company and starts building the R&D program within the company. But from day one, the people that we bring on board are ones that we're very comfortable with as people who are really going to prioritize turning that crank on the platform and creating that first developmental candidate and racing to the clinic. We want to hire the right people with the right mindset from the outset within the company. And not everybody has that I think emphasis or cultural fit for the company. Some people think much more basic about problems and love to imagine, love to discover. We need those folks, absolutely need them, but they're probably a little bit more suited to staying within academia.
So yeah, what are some of the traits that you look for when you're working with students who could potentially be working at these companies? Like, are there specific things that you see in them that make you think, huh, okay, he or she would be great?
Yeah, I think there's some general qualities that I always look for, and I think I look for not just in my students and postdocs, but in anybody I want to work with. And it's somebody who has a lot of drive and positive energy and determination, grit. They'll keep coming back even if something's not working. Have the intelligence to be able to channel that energy in productive ways. Have creativity, and I view creativity differently from intelligence. There's an element of risk-taking in creativity because you're doing something novel or different, stepping outside the box a bit. Attention to detail. because, for anything as complex as therapeutics or biology, the devil's in the details, and can work well with others. Being collaborative and cooperative is something that we very, very much value. We value the culture of our companies. And then if it's somebody who's going to be in the company, I want somebody who's very practically minded. There's some folks who just have fun thinking about science and thinking about problems. We absolutely need those folks, but not necessarily as the first employee of the company. For the first employee of the company, we want somebody who's very practically minded, knows what the goals are from the outset, and are going to move mountains to advance towards those goals.
Yeah. I'm trying to capture all that. So it was drive, grit, creativity, works well with others, practical minded.
Yes, you
Yeah.
said it better than I did.
That's a great list. I'm gonna remember that because I could probably learn a thing or two about types of people to hire that fit criteria. Because I've always seen when you nail the right hire, when you are able to bring the right person onto your team, it can be like a 10x, 100x impact. Then
Oh, I
one
completely
great
agree.
hire can change the trajectory of the company.
Absolutely. There's a saying that hiring is the most important decision that a leader makes. And I firmly believe that. I spend lots of time interviewing people. I spend lots of time talking to references because those, especially the first few hires, are critical. And that, of course, includes the CEO. We like to get, there's some people who spin companies out of their lab where their postdoc becomes the CEO.
Hmm.
I think that companies are so complex. They're more complex than academic labs. That my academic lab has basically three levels, right? There's undergrad, there's grad student, and postdoc, which I consider kind of the same level. And then I have some staff people, and all the other functions in my lab, either I do or I outsource to the rest of the campus, right?
Hmm.
All the financial management, HR, et cetera. All that is within the company, and the company has not just R&D, which is what I do within my lab. The company has R&D, then there's manufacturing, there's clinical, there's the business side of things. The CFO who works with investors, the CBO who works on competitive intelligence and business deals, and then there's the board, the investors. So it's much more complex,
Wow.
and so we tend to want to bring on board very experienced people who have prior startup experience because I think that that's critical. And then being able to hire a CEO who's a great cultural leader, because culture comes from the top, is also really important. So that's really the most important position to hire for within the company.
That's a good point you made about culture. So when you're talking about culture, what in your companies that you have seen become successful, what has the culture been like there?
My most two recent companies I'm really proud of because there were prior companies where I didn't yet know the importance of culture and brought on board a CEO who turned out to be kind of a closet narcissist. I didn't get to know them well enough beforehand. And it was somebody who thought they were always the smartest person in the room and didn't listen to other people. And you might imagine that leads to a number of downstream consequences that
Yeah.
don't result in the most productive and happy workplace. So I learned that in the most two recent companies I've had, the CEO is a former graduate student of mine. So,
Wow.
basically I'm old enough now that people can graduate from my group, get a lot of experience within industry and startups. And then I had the joy of recruiting them back. So one of them, we started a company together. She was the first employee of 4D and that, we took that public. Started a second company that got sold to Pfizer. And then she was CSO of a company that I was not affiliated with. And then she was available so we could recruit her to become CEO of the company. So at the time that she became CEO, she already had 10 years worth of industry experience in startup companies and a beautiful resume with two exits. And the person who's the CEO of my youngest company, or no, second youngest company right now, also was an incredibly talented person in my lab and got great industry experience before we recruited him into that role. So it's probably rare to have that, to be working with somebody for 17 years before you recruit them as CEO. But that is, I have great respect for these folks, love working with them, and they're terrific culturally. And I know them obviously very, very well. So very de-risked situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like relationships are a great multiplier too. I mean, the best compound interest not only comes from money, but also comes from relationships that have been built up over time.
Absolutely. I think as we get older, our network grows which in network I define as the collection people I can call, I can pick up the phone and call and ask for help, or they can pick up the phone and call and ask me for help.
Yeah.
And that grows. And I think as a result, somebody's leverage, somebody's capability, the ability to get things done grows and grows a lot as well with that network.
Yeah.
So cultivating a network and building relationships is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that like taking a company public? I mean, that's a very unique experience that not a lot of people have been able to have the chance to do.
Yeah, it was December of 2020.
Oh,
Three of
wow.
us did so in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
I probably would not have done it if it were before COVID because, I had two kids under the age of 10. I have an academic lab and, hopping on planes, trains, and automobiles everywhere from Boston to San Diego over the course of the way that IPO roadshows used to be done would have probably been a little tough.
Hmm.
But in COVID, it was all by Zoom, right? And it continues that way these days. That's, I think, an improvement. It was me, the CEO, and the executive chairman of the board who did the roadshow. We had terrific bankers. So it was Goldman and B of A were our two book runners, or top two book runners. And they did, I think, a terrific job in prepping us, but rehearsed the heck out of our pitch. We all had speaking parts. And then there's a lot of regulatory things that come along with that. You can't say anything outside the S1 because otherwise you'd be placing some investors at an advantage or disadvantage relative to each other. So there was a lot of education that went into the process. And then it was just 75 meetings over 2 months, from
Wow.
October through December. And a lot of fun, though. There'd be days where I'd wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to start pitching Europe, and then finish the end of the day at like 6 or 7 pitching Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was pitching, I think it was BlackRock, $12 trillion fund at the time these days. And it's COVID, so my kids are in school. So I get a text from my son saying, Dad, I'd like a grilled cheese sandwich and some tomato juice, please, for lunch, because the kid just got out of, for lunch.
Hmm.
So I get in my speaking part. Poor kid only has 20 minutes for lunch. So as soon as I'm done with my speaking part, turned off the camera, sprinted downstairs with my laptop, made him lunch, and then ran back upstairs and flicked on the camera again for Q&A.
That's
So
so
it was
funny.
kind of a complex time to be doing that, but it was exhilarating. By the end, it ended up being 21x subscribed, and
Wow.
we upsized the IPO by about 2 to 3 fold, took in a lot more money, and we priced above the range. So it turned out to be a very successful outcome, which was thrilling. So it was a good way to end that wonderful educational process.
Yeah, that's really cool. What did that particular company do then?
That was 4D. So
40. Okay.
the capital was I mean, at that stage, we had dosed patients in 2 clinical trials funded by the private rounds, but the company was really ready to scale to additional products and to advance things further into the clinic. So that's what the IPO was for. So that the company right now, by the end of this year, well, already they're on a path, just timing wise, by some point in next year, they'll be in 3 pivotal clinical trials, 3 phase 3s.
Hmm.
So for therapeutics for blinding disorders, for age-related macular degeneration and diabetic macular edema. So it was really the IPO that really got the ball rolling on enabling that to happen, providing the capital to cover those clinical trials.
Yeah. I when I was in school, I remember stem cell still had like a negative connotation around it. Like there was like this fear around it, almost like nuclear reactors too. I remember those are the two things that in our science classes got talked about often as the wave of the future, but how it was still kind of just looked down on, like almost like a little taboo. So how has that evolved over time? Just the perspective on stem cell.
Yeah, I think the reason it was a bit controversial at the beginning was that when it came to embryonic stem cells.
Hmm.
So they're adult stem cells, and those are used in the clinic. Like blood stem cells are used in cancer therapies, for example, or used for treating sickle cell. Where you harvest the stem cell, you take it. Sometimes if it's cancer, you treat people with chemotherapy and wipe out their blood system, and then put the stem cell back in to reestablish the blood system. So that comes from a patient's own blood. It's not very controversial. Where it starts getting controversial is if you're talking about an embryonic stem cell, because investigators, dissect or destroyed an embryo in order to create that stem cell. In reality, they're around, there are hundreds of thousands of embryos frozen down in fertility clinics across the country because people have been doing in vitro fertilization for 30, 40 years. And there are a lot of leftover embryos from IVF. A lot of those parents are now in their 60s and 70s. They're not going to have kids anymore. They don't need the embryos. And what are you going to do with those? You probably at some point could dispose of them. So I didn't consider it to be very controversial to take an embryo that was otherwise going to be disposed of and use it to generate embryonic stem cells. But you might imagine that ends up overlapping a bit with the abortion debate in this country.
Yeah.
And so it did end up being controversial for some elements within, across the socioeconomic spectrum. But a lot of that was addressed back in 2006 when Shinya Yamanaka, who was a Japanese now Nobel laureate, discovered that you can actually take an adult cell, like a skin cell or a blood cell, and overexpress several genes, overproduce several proteins within the stem cell, and choose the proteins such that these are ones that are very important in the function of an embryo. And this actually reboots that adult cell and turns it into something that's embryonic-like. So it's
Wow.
at that stage functionally identical to an embryonic stem cell. So this is called pluripotency reprogramming. He won the Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine for it, I think in 2012.
Okay.
And now this is routine that people will take adult cells and create induced pluripotent stem cells out of them. And that is absolutely, used as an alternative for embryonic stem cells. So people use them both interchangeably now, but as a result of having this non-controversial source of stem cells, the field is a lot less, is viewed, I think, a lot more positively by all elements of the political spectrum.
Wow. And he just discovered this in 2006, just 20 years ago.
That's right. Yes, and they're routinely used in the clinic now.
That's
And
incredible.
incredible discovery as well, because you can do things like, let's say you don't understand how somebody got Parkinson's disease. You can take an adult stem cell from a Parkinson's patient, turn back the clock to turn it into an embryonic-like cell, and then start turning the clock forward again to guide that cell to differentiate into cells of the nervous system and figure out where things went wrong. So
Oh
it's
my
also teaching
God.
us about disease.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was a very landmark discovery.
See, us
That
common folk don't know about this kind of stuff at all. We're just like, what?
Yeah, I would say that and CRISPR are probably the two most important discoveries in biology of the century so far.
What's that second one you said? What was,
Oh, CRISPR?
yeah, what's
Yeah.
that? Oh, yeah,
Um,
I've heard of that, but I would love to hear more about it from you.
yeah, this one I'm very proud of was invented by a colleague of mine at Berkeley, Jennifer Doudna.
Oh, incredible.
And the idea is that in some cases you want to edit the genome, change the sequence of DNA. So, for example, people get cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia or hemophilia. All these diseases are caused by mutations of particular genes within the genome. And it'd be very powerful to be able to edit the genome to fix those mutations.
Hmm.
And then in addition, if you could change the sequence of the genome, you could do the kinds of things I just mentioned to you earlier that, this mutation leads to Parkinson's disease. We don't really understand how. Let's take a healthy stem cell and introduce that specific mutation. And now we have kind of like a control cell that's normal and another cell that's identical to it, except for maybe a couple of bases in the genome that have been edited. And then you can start using those as tools to understand what causes Parkinson's. So it was very, very difficult to edit or change the sequence of the genome. And one way to do it is you can introduce an enzyme that can, cut at particular places, and you can kind of paste in DNA into those spots. But it requires you to have an enzyme that you can direct to any kind of zip code in the genome, any location within the genome. And that was very, very difficult to do. So Jennifer Doudna was the first to engineer this enzyme complex called Cas9, CRISPR-Cas9, and discover how to direct it to any location in the genome, in any genome, from bacteria through human genome. So that gives you the ability to recruit this machinery to any location in a genome to change the sequence in a very targeted way. So that was originally published in 2012. Jennifer won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for it in 2022. And it's ubiquitously used throughout the world now. Very, very broadly used.
Wow, and you were right there alongside of it. You saw some of it, I'm sure, happen.
I've had the joy of collaborating with. I mean, Jennifer collaborates with many people, but I've had
Yeah.
the joy of collaborating with her on a project, and she's brilliant. I have nothing but respect for her.
Yeah, that's incredible. Um, this is a good time to ask this question because it's what I was wondering, and it wasn't a stock question. I'm truly curious about how AI is affecting this field. We hear a lot about it on the outside, that AI will accelerate a lot of this progress. Is that true, or is that something that venture capitalists are just saying just to feed the AI hype?
Yeah, I mean, there is some hype. I mean, I'll talk about the fundamentals and then say, yeah, it has been hyped. We use AI and ML, so within our work, I view it as an important tool in the toolbox.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to pull out a microscope, sometimes you need to pull out a CRISPR, sometimes you need to pull out AI. I view it as a tool, not the tool, but it can certainly accelerate, enable therapeutic development, or really any branch that involves biology. And it's an enabler, but I don't think it's sort of, I wouldn't say we're an AI company any more than I would say we're a microscopy company. It's a tool. That said, it is very powerful. It still requires data, right? What you feed into the AI algorithm to be able to train it is data. So it is absolutely still contingent upon experimentalists. And then the AI makes a prediction, but the ultimate arbiter of whether that prediction is true is you need to do it in the lab and test it and see if the prediction is, experimentally working well. But I think it can accelerate experiments and leverage experiments and make it more effective. So we definitely use it for that purpose. We feed it a lot of data and it makes predictions that have been very valuable for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like another tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
I asked that because, we hear some things about how just stay alive for 5 more years because then we'll be able to cure everything. Does that sound outlandish to you? I'm curious.
It's a very optimistic view of the world. I think probably a little bit more optimistic than mine. So I don't think we're going to cure everything in 5 years. There's still some tough ones, but I would love to see lifespan and well span increasing again. Well span meaning that not just how long you're alive, but how long you're healthy enough to enjoy your lifestyle.
Yeah, like quality of life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Where do you see lifespan heading towards? I'm not sure what the average is right now, but where do you see it heading?
Yeah, I can't recall exactly. It dipped a bit with COVID. For the
Hmm.
first time, I think in since the 20s, lifespan went down a little bit. I actually don't know the latest this year as to whether or not it's recovering. I do think there's hope there. One thing I'm very enthused about is the anti-obesity drugs, right?
Hmm.
The GLP-1 agonists from Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, and there are going to be others. And those are tackling obesity. Obesity is a significant challenge. This country on average is overweight, and it's not just being overweight. We know all of the comorbidities of that because it has impact for cardiovascular health. Being overweight is a risk factor for type 2 diabetes or diabetes in general. And then diabetes is a risk factor for heart disease, for vision, so it causes all of these other problems and challenges, and obesity leads to lower lifespan. So these drugs work. 15% or greater loss in weight for people who are taking these compounds. There's been a little bit of controversy currently within our healthcare system about whether, is obesity a health condition or is it a cosmetic situation? And there
Hmm.
has been some, I think, thoughts from Washington that it's more the latter, and as a result, questioning of whether or not the healthcare system should reimburse for it. But I'm a very strong believer that if you reduce somebody's weight, you're improving their cardiovascular health and you're increasing their well span. So I'm hoping that these will positively impact human health across the board looking ahead. And I look forward to seeing that happen.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I have mixed feelings on it just because, I know there's some side effects there as well. And I
Mhm.
guess my line of thinking is, hey, there's no shortcuts in life. Get in the gym, exercise, eat healthy. However, I think I was reading that there's side effects of only 1%. Maybe it's a little bit more, but the benefits far outweigh the risk. That's what it seems like.
Yes, I mean, I personally, I work out regularly. That's something I enjoy, but I think not everybody has the inclination, the time, the lifestyle to be able to do so. I do have a colleague, with some of the side effects you referred to. One is GI tract problems, so
Yep.
gut indigestion problems. Another is muscle loss. So
Yeah.
that's a direct side effect. So I have a colleague who's lost a lot of weight being on one of these compounds, and he started going to the gym to be able to counteract the muscle loss. So
Mm,
it's best of both worlds for him.
that's good. Yeah. I haven't really spoken to too many people about this, but my dad actually went on one of the drugs for like a 3 month period, and man, it was a disaster because he had a gallbladder issue, and then the
Mhm.
entire thing spiraled, and he ended up getting pancreatitis
Oh God.
from
Okay.
the whole experience, and then it became necrotizing pancreatitis.
Oh no.
And he
There.
ended up being in the hospital for 6 months. So I just have very mixed feelings on all these drugs. I've read about it, and I totally get how, like I said before, the benefits far outweigh the risk. I think my father may have fallen into that small percentage, and you never know for certain. Of course, we asked doctors, and they were like, maybe. We're not quite sure though.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear
But
that. I hope he's doing well.
yeah, he's doing great now. Luckily, the hospital he was at took really good care of him. And we needed doctors from all different sorts of fields to collaborate and figure it all out. But they figured it out. It just became very complex. But we're thinking maybe the drugs may have contributed to it. Don't know for certain.
Hmm.
But I remember reading that pancreatitis is one of the side effects. But that being said, it seems like obesity is an issue. Diabetes is a huge issue. Cardiovascular issues are huge. And if these drugs can cause people to lose weight and, keep those risks at bay, that's a net win for the entire country, then entire
On
world.
average, I totally agree. Yes.
Yeah. Um, they're transitioning that into the pills now. Has that already happened from shots to pills?
Yeah, there's going towards oral is absolutely the next step, I think. Yeah, Eli Lilly has one, I think, in phase 3. For their particular compounds, the side effects go up. So
Hmm.
the GI problems are worse for the oral. So I think that there still needs to be some challenges overcome, but people are identifying novel targets. It's not just GLP-1. There are other targets that can be drugged
Hmm.
to be able to enhance the impact of the GLP-1 agonist. So it'll probably end up being combination therapies where you can reduce the GLP-1 agonist level to a point where the side effects become less. But still lots of work to do there, I think, as a field.
Yeah, and I feel like once it goes to pill form, and it already is, adoption will increase probably even more because
Yes,
some people are freaked out by shots. So
totally
pills make
agree.
it easier. Yeah. So, David, what are you working on nowadays? What's been on your desk? What are you up to?
Well, a couple of things. I have my two youngest companies. So one is works with cancer. So it's a viral gene delivery technology for treating cancer,
Hmm.
and we're engineering the viruses to be better. And then the other one is a stem cell company. So it's human pluripotent stem cells, and we developed a terrific scalable process where we can grow these things in 10 liters at very high densities, so that we can because otherwise cell therapies can be so expensive that they're not accessible for a large fraction of the population. If we can scalably produce them, we can make them much cheaper and much more accessible and much more viable, I think, as a therapeutic modality. So it's a stem cell bioprocess and manufacturing company, scaling it up for a couple of clinical targets. So I'm on the boards of both of those companies. I consult regularly for them, regular meetings, which I look forward to and very much enjoy. Helping build the teams, which are incredible, high-powered teams now. So thrilled to be seeing those on both of those companies on a great path. I have a couple concepts for new companies within the university that are incubating. Not quite ready yet to spin out, but will soon be. So looking forward to the next generation of companies. And then about 3 years ago, you mentioned in my introduction QB3 and Bakar Labs.
Hmm.
I had this wonderful opportunity to help others develop their technologies into companies. So QB3 is an organization that's funded straight from the state of California. It's a UC, multiple University of California organization, Berkeley, UCSF, and Santa Cruz, plus we're starting to work with other UCs. And it's an organization focused on lowering barriers to getting technologies from academia into industry. And we view that as a public service to the state of California, in that we're helping technologies turn into cures for disease, for example. And we're also working on technologies that can potentially impact climate change. So we recently expanded our mission. And that's going to help the public of California as well as the world. And at the same time, by getting it into companies, we're helping create jobs within the state of California. So we really view this, company formation as a public service. And we have been doing this for a number of years. And about 4 years ago now, we just celebrated our 4th anniversary.
Nice.
We really started scaling that, and we opened up and began to open up this growing network of startup company incubators called Bakar Labs. The first building opened up 4 years ago. We just had our 4-year anniversary celebration on last Friday, and it's a 92,000 square foot biotech incubator on the UC Berkeley campus. So it's the largest university and owned and operated biotech incubator in the country, and we have incubated over 50 companies so far. So we currently have 30 within the incubator, and another 20 have graduated and outgrown the incubator environment and moved on. But over 4 years during their time with us, the companies have raised nearly $850 million of capital and created over 450 jobs within California, within the local ecosystem.
Wow.
So we're having positive economic, impact on the area, as well as increasing the chances that technologies are going to find their ways into cures for human disease. So this is we built a pretty broad range of programs that are supporting and accelerating these companies. We have a number of corporate partners, including Genentech, Amgen, AbbVie, Eli Lilly, Bayer, Johnson & Johnson in the biotech and pharma space. That's 4 of the 5 largest pharma companies in the world are our partners, and they're working with the companies, partnering with the companies, licensing technologies from them. So we're enabling that connectivity to happen. I set up a VC fund that's investing in the companies and helping provide them capital. And the ecosystem is working to the point where we're actually doing 3 more buildings now. So we're building a second facility at UCSF that will be a 95,000 square foot facility. As I alluded to a moment ago, we're moving into energy and materials companies that can work on technologies that can potentially address climate change. So that's a 3rd building that we're putting up on the Berkeley campus, 146,000 square feet, just did groundbreaking about a month ago. And then a 4th building is going to be for companies that have outgrown the incubator ecosystem. Typically when companies end up being around 15, 20, 25 people or so, they start wanting their own space and kind of contiguous space. And that space at that level, 10, 15,000 square feet was really hard to get in Berkeley. You need to do, kind of a sublease from another company because real estate developers don't lease at 10,000 square feet. They start leasing at maybe 25, 30,000 square feet. So our companies were leaving the Berkeley ecosystem and moving to the peninsula or down south in the East Bay because they couldn't find space in Berkeley that fits them. So our 4th building, which we just announced about 3 months ago or so, is going to be around 80,000 square feet of space, graduation space for companies that have outgrown an incubator environment. And we're going to lease them space at 5, 10, 15, 20,000 square feet increments so that they can stay close to campus and continue to enjoy all the advantages of being close to campus and being within the incubator ecosystem. So we're 92,000 square feet going on about 415,000 square feet within the next several years. So thrilled to be leading that growth.
That's incredible. I mean, talk about scale and impact. When you set out on your career, was this the vision?
No, I had no idea. Yeah.
Because you talked through all that. I'm just like, okay. I mean, you are waking up every day and you are literally changing the world. I know that sounds cliche, but I mean, the discoveries all of you are coming across and the companies that you're helping mentor, invest in, fund in, help incubate. These are game-changing technologies that truly tilt the world.
We're thrilled with that. We're thrilled to get those technologies into a position where they can really scale into products that benefit society. In addition, like I mentioned, we're economically stimulating the state of California. Over its 25-year history, QB3 has helped out over 300 companies that have collectively hired or created 13,000 jobs and raised $17 billion. So we're economically stimulating the state of California and the country as well. And then the third thing I'm very proud of as well is that we're providing career and educational opportunities for students at the university. That we have several internship programs where we're taking undergraduate students, graduate students, law students, business school students, and placing them in this is paid for by the state by a grant from the state of California that we're very grateful for. We're placing them in workforce development programs. We're placing them in internships within the startup companies. And these companies obviously are very small. They're scrappy. They don't have an internship budget, but we're investing in enabling undergrads and graduate students to be placed within the companies and learn. So instead of, for example, being a receptionist at the library to work their way through school, these students are having the opportunity to learn how to do R&D within a company, within a startup.
That's a
So
valuable
of the
experience.
students, yes. So we've done this already for over 125 students over the past 2, 3 years, and we
Hmm.
hope to scale this further. But of the students who have graduated after doing an internship, the undergrads, over 90% of them are getting job offers in the companies, and
Wow.
then 70% of them are accepting the job. The other 30 are going to grad school typically. But we're creating jobs for our students as well, enhancing their educational impact. So it's really, win-win-win scenarios,
Yeah.
win for the university, win for the students, win for the startup companies, and hopefully win for society.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about this sounds like a true ecosystem to me. Um,
Yep.
Win-win-win for everyone involved.
Yes, absolutely. But no, I didn't.
Didn't set
I'll
out
be,
on that. That wasn't on
no, no.
your fourth grade card about what I want to do when I get older.
My dad was a professor of very basic biology. He's retired now.
Okay.
My mother was an MD who ran, clinical trials and got drugs approved for Novartis and Sanofi. So I ended up kind of halfway in between them. I
Yeah.
do applied research, but do it within academia. And so I always knew I wanted to get our technologies into a position where eventually, maybe my mom would run the clinical trial and my sister would prescribe it. She was a practicing physician,
Hmm.
but I never knew I'd, be playing more of a firsthand role in getting those technologies and
This
to the
wasn't
point.
on the dinner table conversations when you were growing
No,
up. No.
not at all.
Um, what advice would you give to founders, entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, your students? You've seen, I mean, you've come across so many people now, so many people who want to build companies that are building companies, successfully exited, taking companies public. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, the three, I think, criteria that make for a successful company are, three T's: technology, TAM, and team.
Hmm.
So the technology has to be differentiated. It has to be able to address an important problem, an unsolved problem. Total addressable market, or TAM, is, how big is that problem? What's the value going to be? And then team is absolutely critical. And that one, I think, gets a little bit undervalued sometimes when people are building companies.
Yeah.
That, like we talked about earlier, culture is really important. That if you end up having a, incredibly productive, collegial, supportive, positive, hardworking culture, people will move mountains to enable a technology and a company to succeed. So I think the ability to work really well with others and to value the culture, the team around you, and place a strong emphasis on building that is something that I think is a little bit undervalued. And so that's one strong piece of advice I would give entrepreneurs. Pay attention to your team, pay attention to culture,
Hmm.
and then kind of a larger scale version of that is network. That you really need to be able to call on people and ask them for help. And of course, it should be two-way, that people should be able to call you and ask you for help.
Hmm.
And the number of people that do that, you can do that with, grows over your career. That's your network, right?
Yeah.
And those are the people you call for advice, for help, and growing and cultivating your network is really important as well. And so, it's important to create situations to stay in touch with people, to have steady phone calls, maybe once or twice a year at least.
Hmm.
Because if you haven't been in touch with somebody for 5 years, they're probably no longer within your network.
Hmm.
So cultivating that network is important because that really can help you out a lot. And the two work together too. Like sometimes members of your network become your CEO and become your team.
Hmm. Yeah. Well said. David, before we sign off today, anything else that you want to share and leave with our viewers?
I just want to, perhaps say that, looking ahead, this country is, in my opinion, the strongest country in the world. I'm proud to be American. I was originally an immigrant. My mother was from Latin America. My dad's American, but I was born outside the U.S. and I'm
Okay.
thrilled to have the opportunity to move here. And what made this such a strong country is really, especially an investment in STEM, in science and technology, especially, post World War II.
Hmm.
And we're leaders in biotech, leaders in pharma, leaders in tech, in AI and software, because those investments were made a number of years ago. And that has led to the, incredible quality of life that we have within our country. There's been inflation, of course, that there are challenges to that.
Mhm.
But by and large, we have an incredible quality of life compared to many other places in the world. So I really hope that the country realizes that that stature of the US was as a result of investment in education and in research and development and in science and technology. So I think some elements of the country are perhaps forgetting that a little bit now. And so I think if we want to make America great again, we should be investing in federally funded research and in R&D.
Yeah. Well said, David. Thanks so much for joining today. Really appreciate your time. Okay.
Absolutely. Likewise, we appreciate your time. Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
invitation.